Welcome, everybody. Day 4. You made it here. We're approaching the finish line. No offense to anybody that's presented to date, of which I think we did a fabulous job. We had Jocelyn Pearson from the scholarship system yesterday. She killed it as she always does. We had the Princeton Review on Wednesday that I thought was really compelling presentation. And then it was just our team at College Aid Pro that hopefully set the foundation for you guys, set the tone a little bit on Tuesday. But again, I think today we have some of the most kind of jam-packed information to offer. So I'm psyched for today's presentation. There's our guy, Rod Wood's all over it. He knows. So you know what, Rod? Thanks for the prop, pal. Why don't you tell us where you are in the country? Throw it in the chat, and the graduating class of the high school student. Let us know where you're at, because you'll see, Brian, we got basically all 50 states covered here, as you're seeing already. We're going end to end. We don't have any really geographic diversity to offer you guys today. Ryan and I are both north of Boston, a few towns apart here, so you're stuck with the Boston boys for the next hour or so. But hopefully that's all right, and hopefully we can prove some value again over the next hour here. From a housekeeping standpoint, let's continue to make this thing real interactive. Continue to put your questions specifically in the Q&A, because those all get archived. So when we send you all of these recordings next Tuesday, you'll benefit from the questions and the answers, and your buddies, your peers that couldn't join us live today will also get the benefit from those as well. Similar to what we done Tuesday, and for those of you that have been privy to the presentations that we do, we always do some pretty cool giveaways and discounts for live only folks. So we're going to have, again, similar to what we did too, we will match that, the lowest we've ever discounted anything that we do. I'll talk about that when we leave here today. And again, also some free giveaways, and make sure that you guys, no matter what you do, our biggest get here today is that you continue to follow along with what we do. We're trying to educate folks on a weekly, almost daily basis, no matter where you are in this process. So if nothing else, we hope we do provide enough value where you come see us again. Okay. So my name is Matt Carpenter. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, I got the special jerseys today. Brian, wearing the tie-dye today, representing College Aid Pro. I'm coming up on 20 years of doing this, and all of my experience, the genesis started in my own household with two parents that worked their butts off, did the best they could for their kids, but didn't know what the hell to do when it came to sending their kids to college, which was not unique. And I was just a immature 18-year-old just trying to go figure out where he can party for 4 years, basically. The end result, it wasn't great from a financial standpoint, but that kind of led me to my career and trying to help other families avoid similar mistakes. And that's what we do. And we love it. It's a really awesome, rewarding thing to help families avoid the mistakes that you made, right? Today, we're here really to focus primarily on building this college list, okay? So as you class 2024 families and underclassmen below that start thinking about where we actually going to apply, I think you have arguably the best resource in the world that's going to be coaching you through that today. The reason why I'm such a fan of Brian's is I've known him for a while. I don't know, maybe probably a dozen or so years now, but he's been on every side of this fence, right? So he's worked as an admissions counselor for the colleges and multiple different colleges, okay? He's read tens of thousands of admissions applications and continues to today. He's also been on the private sector. He's also and currently is a college counselor and has been at a few really prestigious private high schools in the Boston area here. It gives him a really unique perspective. And again, there's nobody, I don't think, better served to inform you all that is actually getting these applications going, okay, here's what I would have advised this family differently of how to complete the Common App, how to complete the essay, whatever. Again, really unique opportunity for you all. Always a great thing for me because I'm always learning something. Brian, what did I miss, pal? What else?
No, I appreciate the introduction, Matt. Yeah, as Matt said, I also grew up just north of Boston and pretty much stayed local. Similar, and one kind of anecdote that I love to tell parents as I'm working with, because they're probably worried that their kids aren't engaged enough. I have made college admissions my career. It's something that, despite the stressors around it, I love doing it. I could not have been the worst test case as a high school student when going through the process myself. My mother, who was a 45-year educator, laughs daily that this is now my career, having gone through the process with me. So I guess to all the parents out there, take a collective breath that they will take it seriously, and you never know, it may become their career. But yeah, as Matt said, I've spent a little over a decade on the college admissions side. Got to work for my alma mater, Bryant University in Rhode Island for a number of years. and then got to work for Boston University for a number of years. That's really where I applied my trade, working for a really highly selective urban research university that gets close to 100,000 applications a year, but has a very low admit rate. Really learn the nuance of what makes the difference between an accept and a not an accept, how it may differ depending on the colleges you're applying to and what divisions within those schools you're applying to, where you're from, just all of those external factors that come into the process. But my favorite part of my job was helping students. And I quickly realized there was a career that was going to allow me to do that even more full time. When I was at BU, I got my master's in educational leadership and policy studies. And for the past decade now, have been working on the high school side. When Matt and I met, I was at a previous high school in the Boston area where I served as the director of college counseling for 4 years. And then currently in my full-time role, I'm the Dean of College Advisement and Student Advancement at Archbishop Williams High School, which is just south of Boston. And so I oversee the entire college admissions process for all of our students, but then do a number of consulting roles off to the side. One, which we'll definitely talk about today. Had the opportunity to join the College Aid Pro team for the last couple of years and serve in a consulting role. See a little go Bryant Bulldogs. Yeah, I also appreciate that. And also work with a firm based out of California and do some curriculum development for them within application curriculum, do some programming for them. And so throughout my career, I've done everything from build parent programming. I've done probably hundreds of parent events at this point. I've presented at many major national conferences. I've recently been quoted as an expert in Forbes magazine in college admissions and have got to serve on a number of webinars. And there are so many experts in this field. One of the things I pride myself on is where I try to become most of an expert is where it matters most. And that's the student interest and the student development and really empowering the student to become the driver in the process. And that's a lot about what we'll talk about today as you look to build that original college list, is to build that empowerment within that process.
I love it. It's a great segue. And again, you guys, as you should be here to see Brian today, and he's going to be providing most of the content. But I want to just do some really quick review stuff because although we're focused on the admissions, look at those handsome devils, Brian. We're focused on the admission side of the fence. I don't want to completely neglect the cost here. I think that's where, and Brian's expressed this to me, as have so many school counselors, of the school counselors can give perfect recommendations to students in terms of the best fits for them, admissions wise, culture wise, check every box in spades, but they might not know if that's going to be an affordable school for that family or not. And nor it's impossible to know that. They don't get to look at your tax returns. It's not in their job description to be perfect in terms of how generous or not schools typically are. In most cases, we're on our own as families to figure out what schools are actually going to cost me. So like we talked about on Tuesday, just a really quick review here. The first thing we want to do is figure out, am I eligible for need-based financial aid? How much financial aid am I going to be eligible for? So it all starts with figuring out what's our family contribution. What's the dollar amount that's going to be assigned to our family based largely on income and assets. Those are the biggest drivers, right? And if our EFC is lower than the sticker price or cost of attendance at a given school, now we're eligible for need-based financial, potentially being the most important word there, because every school is different in terms of their generosity or lack thereof, right? And a percentage of you, just by nature of, I just saw some of your zip codes there, we're probably not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. And there's no magic wand that we or anybody can really provide you guys to change that. So what can we do? How do we get discounts and not pay full sticker price, not pay $85,000 a year, right? That some of these schools are charging. We're going to hit 90 next year that some of these schools are charging. And again, just as a reminder, everybody's going to get these slides. Everybody's going to get some slide decks. But these are things that we want to be thinking about. Here's how we get value again, even if we're not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. And I saw a couple of class 2023s here. You've missed the boat, obviously, on a lot of the content here, but the last bullet point 5 here, it's not too late, right? And that's negotiating. We can't say the word of negotiating, appealing to colleges for more financial aid or more scholarships than the original offers included. And that's something that, again, is not too late if you are class 2023 family. Now, I know I'm not sharing just for a second here, because what I want to do is go, if you haven't already, make sure that you create an account in our platform, right? I know just about all of you have at least set up your free version, mycap.college. I just put that in the chat there because it allows you to answer these big questions instantaneously. Are you eligible for financial aid? How much? At which colleges? What are your EFCs? And before we even become distracted by all those terms, and if someone's just chiming in today that didn't hear us on Tuesday, you're drinking out of a fire hose probably and just heard about 5 terms you've never heard in your life. And sounds like I'm speaking a different language. I promise we will catch you up, and don't feel strange if that's how you feel. But to simplify things, when you create your account here, you just got to answer a few questions, and then we're just going to tell you what colleges are actually going to cost you. And are you going to get financial aid? Are you going to get scholarships? How much? Because that's how I want you focused, right? This is a family of 4 that lives in the town that I live in, small city north of Boston called Beverly, Mass. And the state school, the Massachusetts flagship school, UMass, is going to be more expensive for them than the $85,000 private college that is Amherst College, right? And this is not a really wonky case. This is average income, average assets. It's just how this school does business. And the big takeaway is, do not be fooled by the sticker prices, because in most cases, that's the least important variable in determining how affordable or not affordable a college is going to be for your family. So as Brian starts talking about how to build your list, I want you simultaneously thinking about, what are these schools going to cost me, in addition to finding the right fits for your children, which is obviously the number one goal here. Brian, let me hand it over to you, pal, and I will get out of your way. You're muted, buddy.
Thank you. Sorry about that. You'd think in year 3 of using Zoom, normally we wouldn't make those same mistakes, but here we go. So what I want to go over today is a few different strategies when thinking about building a college list and kind of everything that goes into that. And as I said, really empowering yourself and empowering your student to be thinking about what you're looking for. But I wanted to go into what kind of makes a college list. Now, what I will say at the front is the caveat is some of this is going to feel a little generalized in nature. And one of the most important things about good college counseling is that it is not generalized. It is not cookie cutter. Now, obviously, when we're talking about this to a large audience, it does have to be simplified for the purposes of our presentation, but know that there are real opportunities, and some that we'll talk about, that will allow you to personalize this process so much more. So if I say something that doesn't necessarily cater directly to that, there are variables in so many different ways that we can change this process to cater it towards you. And I'll do my best to try to build an umbrella wide enough that it covers everyone. When I look at a college list, it's going to vary depending on the student needs and financial aid and where they're from and what their academic profile looks like. But the average list right now throughout the United States falls somewhere between 10 to 14. Where Matt and I are from, it is a little higher. That is strictly just because of geographical location. There are more colleges up here in the Northeast, particularly in the Boston area. So kids just naturally apply to a couple more just because there's more closer to them, maybe in some of the other area of the country. So the school I work with will see students that will have schools maybe 5 to 7, and then others will have lists that are 15 to 16. You may see those lists get a little higher too, depending on the academic interests they have, particularly for a pre-med or an engineering, things like that. When you're looking at schools and you're looking to build a list, really where you want to get started from the point is that first academic profile, looking at your GPA and looking at it for all 4 years, but particularly your junior and senior year. Your freshman and sophomore year are absolutely crucial. They're important. They'll be viewed in the application. But what I always tell students is that junior and senior year is when you should be maturing as a student and as a person to be preparing yourself for a college preparatory curriculum. You'll also look at the level of courses that you'll be taking within that. And again, this is all kind of stuff that will get specialized in any type of one-on-one conversation. But I built a quick list here. This would be for a student that would probably be like a 3.8 unweighted out of 4.0 with probably like a strong mix of honors and AP or IB courses if you're in an IB curriculum. And they're probably looking at a pre-med type major, or they're considering something in medicine, maybe biology, maybe thinking about med school down the road. When I'm looking a perfect list and a perfect balance, and they never usually come out that way, and that's totally fine because we cater to the individual student, you want to fall in that 50, 20, 20, 25, 25 method. And what I mean by that is...
And sorry to interrupt, Brian.
Yeah.
Can we quickly just hit on the difference between weighted and unweighted GPA?
Yeah, absolutely. So a weighted GPA is when schools will put physical weight onto the number of your GPA, depending on the level of course that you've taken. For example, some high schools throughout the country will now say put an extra half point of a GPA for an honors course, maybe an extra full point. So some schools around the country operate on that strict unweighted 4.0 GPA, regardless of level. There are some high schools that operate on a 5.0, a 6.0. Know that regardless of how your school does that, that you will be still treated equally within the college admissions process. It's an unwritten secret that everyone knows about, that most schools are going to recalculate down to that 4.0 GPA, but we'll still give you credit for taking those harder courses. When you're looking at safeties, targets, and reach schools, how I define those is by looking at the middle 50% average acceptance rates for schools. And this is your first expert tip. So many times when I've gone on tours, whether it's be with kids that are in my schools or kids of family friends or just families that I've worked with, the first question out of the mouth is, what's the average accepted GPA? Or what's the average accepted SAT score? And that's not a bad question, but there's a better question. And the better question is, what is the middle 50% average for the GPA for your accepted class of last year? And I used my former workplace, BU, as a great example of that. Every year, BU gets somewhere between 80 to 90,000 applications a year. So if you're just asking for that middle mean GPA, which usually falls right around a 3.8 for them, you're not gaining that much of a total picture. However, if you ask for the middle 50% average, what you're now gaining is they're going to say probably somewhere between a 3.5 and a 3.9. So now you've found out that there's a lot more students that kind of fall into what they would consider like admissible. And so when I'm looking to build a student's list, I look at some historical data from how the school is done purposely, personal experiences I've had with them with working students in the past, and gained what I know about their academic profile of past admitted classes. And from an SAT score average or an ACT score average, and then really looking more at the GPA, and particularly now as the test optional movement continues, I look to put kids' schools on their potential list into these three buckets: safeties, targets, and reach schools. Now, what makes a safety for me is if the student falls above that middle 50% average. So they would be in that top 25%. Still not a guarantee. And one thing you'll hear me say, and I'll say it again, I will never guarantee admission to any school in the country because you just never know what's going to happen. The target is you fall into that meaty center. And then a reach school is if in your that lower 25% admitted rate, or maybe even a little bit below that. There is no reason not to apply to a reach school. It is just important that you want to balance out your list. And as you're seeing here, there is a 3-tiered kind of system here of 3 reach schools, 3 safety schools, and then 5 target schools. It is obviously a little too perfect in how it looks. That's part of the example. It doesn't necessarily look around this way, because maybe the kid has a particular interest in a school. One of the things that I always get is I've had students who have grown up loving Duke basketball and have since found that Duke is much more than just a basketball school. It's actually quite the academic institution as well. But they always dreamed about applying there, and they know that may not be admissible. So I would actually call that what would be called a high reach, where they just know, hey, maybe I'm what they're looking for this year. I'm going to go through the application. I don't deter students from applying to schools like that, but what I do require when I work them is that we're going to then balance that out. And so we're going to find a high safety on their list too, and we're going to bump up that targets. And so you can see that kind of second example where you see 40T, 35S, we're bumping up that other side to allow for that high reach. And so as I'm working with students, and again, this is a very 30,000 foot view level, this is how I start to build a list from an academic point, and you can head on to the next slide, Matt, but this is all the other things. Now, when I'm working with students, there are 2 buckets of characteristics that I put into kind of when students are thinking about schools. And I call them kind of front of the brain characteristics and then back of the brain characteristics. So the front of the brain are the obvious ones. They're the ones that you find on the first page of the website. Where is the school located? And where is it? What is the size of the school? So total undergraduate and overall population. Another great institution here in the Boston area would be Northeastern University. Huge institution, well over 40,000 students when you think about both their undergraduate and their graduate population. But we're going to talk a little bit about on the next slide when we get there of kind of a different way to look at Northeastern. What is the campus type? Is it suburban? Is it urban? Is it in the middle of nowhere? Is that what you want? Is it a commuter versus a residential school? Or you're a student who's just looking to get in and get out Monday through Friday? Or are you looking for that full college experience? And then obviously, and many students surprisingly skip this, is does it have your academic interest? And then even more importantly, if you don't have an academic interest, which by the way, the whole stigma against coming in undecided is a thing of the past. More than half of American students right now are going in with some kind of undeclared major, whether it be a minor or a major. And in fact, many schools now offer undeclared as an official major that you can choose. Does the schools you're looking at have great programs for those kids still trying to figure out what they want to do? If you go to the next one. So that back of the brain, and again, this is where it's turning those good questions into great questions. Many students will ask, and a lot when I was working at BU, and I use Northeastern as a great example too, of ask, what's your total population? And so Northeastern might say, hey, we got between undergrad and graduate students, close to 40,000 students. That sounds overwhelming. Did you know that the average class size in Northeastern is 21 students? So not much bigger, or maybe even smaller than some of your high school classes right now. Much better question to be asked. What's the average class size? And getting more specific, what's the average class size in the major that you're looking for? What's the average class size in a freshman class comparable to a junior class? These are the type of questions you want to be asking when you're on tours, when you're doing a research. What is that faculty to student ratio? But more importantly, another great thing to be asking is, what is that advisor to student ratio? And so many students, not only they want to think about how many faculty are there, but many will be pointed with an advisor, particularly another faculty member, maybe for a research project or a larger consortium that they're going to be a part of. And you want to know, what is the relationship I'm going to have with that person? I think a lot of people obviously look at the campus, and it's great to look at that, but what's the external location of the campus? A lot of people will look at the city of Boston and think all schools are the same, but there are very different neighborhoods in Boston that all offer very different and great things to do, but they're different. And so it's important when you visit schools to not only be looking at the school itself, but that surrounding area. What is there to do? If I need a job, can I get a job? What are my transportation options? How is the external community welcome to students at the school? And I think this is a really important question to be asking, particularly if you are looking for a school that maybe is a little farther away from home. You want to know, what is the relationship between the school and the local community? Now, 9 times out of 10, even more than that, they're very positive. In many situations, they're excellent because the town maybe exists or really flourishes because of the school. A great example up here in the Northeast of that would be Burlington, Vermont, and the University of Vermont, and Champlain College and St. Mike's College. The town is just extremely welcoming of those college students who come out every year. But you just don't know what tensions may underlie, and you want to be able to know what kind of surrounding environment you might be putting in. One of the great questions that I always encourage students to ask is, what does the campus layout look like? Where are the freshman dorms in relation to where my classes are going to be? When I was working at BU, one of the territories that I had that I loved traveling to every year was Texas and Oklahoma. But obviously, it's very different to live in Texas than it is in Boston, particularly right now in February. And I can tell you, everything is frozen outside right now. BU is a mile-long campus stretched along an urban city and on a main street. And so that is a different experience for a kid from Texas to have to walk down in the middle of February than maybe if they were also looking at Texas Christian University, which right outside of Dallas, Texas, a little more of a suburban campus. Maybe you're rolling out of bed and you're walking to school in 70-degree weather. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. And so many people will think it's all going to be the same, but you want to be able to ask those questions. How many dining halls are there in your residence hall? Again, that's a guy with experienced winters under his belt. It's nice if you never have to leave the building in the middle of February to go get your food. But if you have to truck all the way across, that might be a little bit different. And then another thing that I think a lot of students maybe get lost in and maybe don't ask, but it's a great one for parents to be asking as you think about who is your student and what kind of area they excel in. What is the academic approach to the institution? Are they more of a research institution? Is this a place where you're going to get your hands dirty? We're going to be required maybe to do a thesis of some sort? Or is it more of a discussion based? You see a lot, especially with the NEAS schools like a Bowdoin or a Bates. They're very small class sizes, very discussion based courses. Is this a school that's going to be very group project heavy? My own alma mater, Bryant University, I felt like I had a group project every semester. As a self-admitted extrovert, for better or worse, I love that. But I also know that's not for everyone. Some people would rather work independently. And so if you're thinking about that, maybe you want to be able to ask those questions. And then again, many schools are now requiring thesis projects, even at the undergrad level. You don't necessarily see them to have the same weight that you would for a graduate or a doctoral program, but you want to know what kind of programs you might be getting yourself into. And so these are some of those kind of back of those brain characteristics that one, you can be thinking about, but also as I'm building the list for a student, and as I've gotten to know the student as a person and as a student and what they're involved in, these are the things that I'm thinking about that could potentially be good matches for each school.
And something else that's bubbling up for me, Brian, I know you've been coaching us up a lot, that this interviews are becoming more and more important, especially as we've gone test optional. And I just have to imagine a student asking some of these questions in interviews would have to bode well, right? If this kid is all over it, they're really thinking about their experience here. Absolutely. So it could be some good cheat codes for your kids here, or for you students that are chiming in and might be doing some of these interviews in the not too distant future.
And not even interview, Matt, but you think about all the times that you can interact with college representatives, whether it be when they come to visit your high school, or you're going to an open house, or they're at a college fair. The amount of times, and use the psychology word because it's a popular major, but it's also a very wide major in terms of what it offers. Kids will come up to my table when I was a college representative and be like, how's your psychology program? What do you think I'm going to say? That it's awful? No, I'm going to tell you it's great. But the kids who came up and said, hey, I'm really interested in child or adolescent psychology. Are there research opportunities? Do you guys have a daycare on campus that I get to work with kids, or do I get to go in the community? That student has now shown a real interest in what they're getting into, but probably has also done some research on the institution as well. And I can tell you right now, the college admissions process is a very human process. So I would have those conversations in October, and then come February or March, when I'm reading applications, that name or that experience probably stuck in my head more than the 20 kids who came up before and just said, how's psychology? How's sports management? How's engineering? Because those are dime a dozen questions. You want to make yourself stand out at any opportunity you can. And what I tell kids, and you'll hear me say it over, the more you make yourself a person and the less of a piece of a paper in this process, the more success you're going to have.
And I just hover over that, because I just think and you've told us that a bunch over the years, and we've coached up the families that we get in front of as a result, because I think that's super important, right? That even these interactions you have that seem very blasé at a college fair, like that person could be reading your application come a couple months from now. And so this stuff matters in getting strategic with these types of questions. Like, with all of these schools being more and more competitive, like, those are the difference makers, right? Like, you've shared so many anecdotal stories where you're like, hey, all these 20 applications look the same, but I remember this kid.
Yep.
Their questions, right?
Yeah, there was this student really quickly that I always remember. It was 6 or 7 years ago. I was at one of those huge college fairs at one of those massive public high schools just outside of Dallas. And they had students who were helping us from our cars to our table. And the young woman who came up to me, I think saw my BU hockey polo on, which I always wore ironically in Texas, and made sure to find me and introduced herself, shook my hand, just said, hi, I'm really excited about applying to BU this year, and took those 5 minutes to introduce herself, talk to me. And then when she applied 3 or 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 months later, she was right around our profile, maybe a little below, but had really flown off the page in terms of her interest in BU. And I remembered that. I was able to bring up that story at committee, and she was admitted and ultimately went to BU. And so these stories are not meant to turn you into kind of a networking guru as a 17-year-old. We understand that there's still some nerves you have to get over that, but those real anecdotal conversations do make a difference. I also want to bring up, and I've talked about it a little bit, about when you're list building, you also need to think about some of those specialty majors. So I use pre-med here as the example, but as I'm talking about this, know that if you're maybe looking at a 5-year BM or master's program that involves an MBA, maybe you're looking at a high-end engineering program, biochemical engineering or biomechanical engineering. Maybe you're looking at a nursing program that have become more and more competitive as the years have gone on. Even education programs now offer maybe 5-6 years. Doctoral therapy has become a very popular program, particularly up here in the Northeast. And so those offer 5-6 years. When you're looking for these, you also need to keep this in mind as you're building the list. What are they looking for out of you as a student? Are they looking for specific research opportunities that you need to be doing in high school? Do you want to be in that research institution, like I said before? Do you want to be looking at more at a liberal arts school? What are the application fees that come off with these additional type of programs? Many times they can be more. Maybe there are specific letters of recommendation you need to consider about the community service involvement. And then what is just your exposure to the field? This is something particularly you want to think about as it relates. We are pretty much back to normal here coming out of the pandemic, but at the same time, many students didn't necessarily get those research or exposure opportunities through internships they might have otherwise gotten. And so schools have come up with creative ways for students to show their interest. And so as you're thinking about this as your building list, just keep that in mind too. And something I always keep in mind as I'm working with students and knowing what their interests are. So there are 4 main list building activities that I go through with students as I'm both working by myself, but then if a student is really struggling to build a list or wants some feedback on his current list, these are the kind of activities I go through. One of the things that I always tell students to list building is both, I'll selfly admit as a nerd, it's a hobby of mine. It's something I really enjoy doing. But at the same time, if I don't bat 1,000, that's probably a good thing. It means that there's some good give or take, and it means that there's some honesty brought in. The students I work with, particularly the ones at my school, and they do not hold back, I tell them, be brutally honest with me. Tell me that you don't like that school that I put on your list, because that tells me a number of things of where I can get it right the next time and give you a couple more suggestions. And so as I work with students, and there's very much a give and take. I almost call it kind of the accordion effect, is that a good list gets a little bigger, then gets a little smaller, then gets a little bigger and gets a little smaller till it's refined to the schools we're actually going to apply to. But the first thing I look at with students is that college list funnel, number of schools that we're going to look at. So when I'm building a first list for, no worries. When I'm building a first list for a student, it's going to be large. Sometimes 25, 30, even a couple more schools, particularly if they're looking at someone somewhere outside of where they might be from. I try to give them both some local options and then some national options, excuse me, from the areas that they're looking at, because I want to make sure that they have options everywhere. So that list can be overwhelming for students. I always preface it by saying, I am not telling you to apply to 25 schools. And really, please don't do that. That's too many schools. But what you're doing is essentially creating that setup for yourself to whittle those down. The next would be that inquiry. So what I tell students is be brutally honest with me and get maybe 10 schools off that list. Tell me, I don't like those. And they can be for whatever reason. And I allow students to be honest with me as long as we are fair in the process. I've had students, and maybe some, whether it's just they're into the clothing or maybe they're an athlete, so they know they're going to have to wear it. They're like, I don't like the colors of that school, so I don't want to apply there. That's fine. That's a little more of a superficial reason to not apply to a school. But as long as we're balancing out the list, I'm willing to play ball. I always realize this is probably the first, maybe the first, and definitely the biggest decision a student has made. And we want to make sure that they feel bought in and valued in the process too, regardless of what those reasons are. We get down to that inquiry stage. This is where I have students start to do some real research. And real research to me isn't logging on to the website for 90 seconds, looking at the homepage. It's checking out the social media. It's watching a few videos on YouTube. It's taking the virtual tour. It's maybe reaching out to any students that you know have applied there or are going there and finding out. That's real inquiry. I do also my own research on those schools for the student. What is going on in terms of the admissions process over the past few years? Are there things that we can take advantage of? Are there events coming up? From there, we look to little down and start to think about what schools are we actually going to go and visit. Now, visit means a lot of different things, particularly since the pandemic. There are schools that offer now virtual visits that very much weigh the same in the process as an in-person visit. Visit could mean a drive down the road for you, or it could mean a significant financial contribution if you're looking at schools across the country and need to pay for flights and hotels and rental cars and things like that. Those are strategies I work with students on what schools might be best to visit. We won't go too much into this, but one of the things that some schools track is what's known as demonstrated interest. This is exactly what it sounds like, is a school will track how many times you visited or have interacted with the school through email, going to their college visit when they come to your high school, going to a college fair where they were and interacting with them, and may factor that into your college decision. And so it doesn't necessarily hurt you if you don't interact, but it does definitely help you if you do. Not every college tracks demonstrated interest, but again, another insider tip, any school you go to, simply ask, do you track demonstrated interest? So many times when I'm working with students, say they're a student here on the East Coast and they're looking schools on the West Coast, and they're like, there's 6 schools out there, but A, I don't have the time, and B, I don't really want to spend the money visiting all those schools that I haven't even been accepted to. We'll look and see which ones track demonstrated interest and say, okay, these 2 out of 6 do. If we can get out there, why don't we make sure you're visiting those two and maybe one more, just so you have a comparative point. And we can see if you get into the other ones, we'll find other ways, maybe a fair or a regional event that they're doing here that you can come and apply to, go to. And then from that, we jump down to that application process, which we'll obviously get into. And then that little red mark is the decision that you make to that one school that you ultimately decide to attend. So the next, I always tell students, is to create a list. What are your needs, your wants, and your nice to have? And this is really more of an honesty with yourself kind of exercise that students need to be thinking about. There are grandiose ideas that I think students have when they think of what college is and what it should be for them. And it's something that can be really important to them. But there are differences between absolute needs and then what are wants and what are nice to haves. Now, those wants and nice to haves can be valued just as much, but we want the needs to be a little more doing of the heavy lifting here. And a great example of that, a really exciting institution that I've had the opportunity to go on campus, and they're doing some great things. They call themselves the premier life skills building institution, is High Point University in North Carolina. They're also really well known because it's just a gorgeous campus, and it has many swimming pools, and freshman dorms have queen beds, and there is a 4-star restaurant on campus. Those are things that many students would think of as a need. I would maybe argue that maybe they're more of a want or a nice to have. Yeah, as a guy who is 6'4", I would have loved to have a queen bed my freshman year of college. Ultimately, I did fine with the normal size twin that was offered to me at Bryant, and had just as much of a time. More of a need for me was I wanted a premier business institution. And so that's where kind of Bryant fell on my list. And to be honest, High Point would have fallen on my list too, had I not been more of a kid who was looking to stay local. And so I think as you're having those conversations with your son or daughter, or with yourself, of thinking, what are some real needs you have? Do you need to have a certain activity that you want to participate in? I was working with a student a couple of years ago who was a football player, and then ultimately found a rugby club and fell in love with rugby and started doing that. And so a need for him was he was only going to apply to schools where he could keep playing rugby. And while that sport has become more popular, not every college has it. Or if they do, maybe it was a club team that wasn't really the competitive outlet that he was looking for. And so that narrowed his list a little bit, but we were happy to work with that need. A want for that student was a larger school, but he was also open to going to a smaller school, and ultimately a smaller school is where he went, as long as they had rugby. And so that was, hey, it'd be great if the school was a little bit bigger, but if I end up maybe at a 5,000 size school rather than a 10 or 15, that I'm not going to be too upset about that. And then those nice to haves, I think many times come down to, as I said, a little more superficial, but still important. What's the dining hall like? How awesome is it? Do they have Taco Tuesday every day? Is there a Pizza Hut on campus? How many Dunkin' Donuts are there on campus? Things like that. Those are those things that I think a lot of times come into play after you've been accepted, and you can start to now wager between. One of the kind of more empowering parts in the process, it's a conversation I'll have with my students at school when I get back from break this week, is the process flips for seniors around March. For this entire process, you've been trying to impress the school, and now you've been admitted, and now they have to impress you. And so that's where those nice to haves come into play. So maybe your parents were saying it's ridiculous to make base a school on how many Dunkin' Donuts are on campus, but maybe you get into 2, and that's still important to you, and you like the schools about the same, but one has 5 and the other you got to go for a 5-mile drive. If you're from where we're from, you're probably going to pick the one with 5. It's a very simple, dumbed down example, but it's a conversation kind of worth having as you think about what is really important to you in terms of building a list. So this next, and this is a chart we can share, but it's something that I kind of show students as all of the kind of different characteristics that a school. So when a student is really struggling, what I do is I'll offer them this chart and simply say, circle to me what's important to you. What do you want out of here? Do you want something that is the ability to create your own major? Do you want students that are rabid fans as athletes? Do you want to go to one of those D1 culture schools, or is that not important to you? Are you looking for guaranteed dorms? Are you looking for a religious-based institution? This is very much nuts and bolts. Let's just get some ideas on paper of what is most important from you, and then we can start to build that list from here. And then the last is something that I usually actually do a lot of times first with students if they're struggling to build a list, is let's just talk about a little bit about free association. And I hinted at one of these before. of whether a school should make it on your list or not. And I use Duke as the example as a late 80s, early 90s kid of many people growing up knew Duke is a great college basketball team. And so if a student walks into my office and says, hey, I want to apply to Duke, or I want to apply to Ohio State, or I want to apply to USC, I'll say, that's great. Give me some adjectives to describe the college. And then how did you first hear about it? Now, that isn't to try to disprove that the student doesn't know anything else about the school or make them feel less in the process because they don't know, but it's more of just try to help them get to the point of, why am I actually applying to this school? Is it still because of I want to go to that atmosphere and I want to be a part of that? That's great. We're just going to do some other research to make sure it's a good fit for you for all the things we talked about early on in the process too. Find out where it falls. But this gives students that first impression opportunity with schools once again of kind of, what was the reason that you first heard about it? Was it because you went on a tour with an older sibling? Did you see a kid wearing a sweatshirt and so you went on a website quickly? Did you see them at a high school visit? Or did you participate in an AAU tournament on their campus and you remember that when you were 12, but now you always want to go back and stay? And so it's important that you take the time to make sure that you're stepping out and really deciding what is most important to you, but also, where did you first hear from this school? And then lastly, I just want to quickly talk about one of the more important things to do as you're thinking about really beefing up who you are as a student, is thinking about research at the high school level and also just your activities at the colleges and activities at the high school level for colleges. You want to be thinking about taking on opportunities outside the classroom that really beef up who you are as an academic student, really show your interest in that level. And so I put this in here. It's something that I definitely talk about students if they're looking at some of those more STEM-based majors for sure too.
Brian, help me with this question, because this is one that I thought was tricky. I don't know if you have a quote unquote easy answer here, but a couple people inquired. So the question is in different variations here, but how do you tell if a small regional liberal arts school is excellent at a particular major? For example, biochem or chemistry. Can we find quote unquote real rankings outside of those that only focus on the national top 10?
Yeah, I think a great way to talk about that is to go to the source, but also to look up who their faculty are and what are their faculty doing in the field. So are their faculty doing external research outside of the classroom? Have they been noted in publications? What do they do when they're not at school? What are some of the recent graduates doing? But I also think more than the recent graduates, what are the graduates have been doing 10 or 15 years after college doing? A lot of colleges like to float that average salary 1 year or 2 years out of school, or 90% employed within 6 months or going to grad school. I a lot of times like to ask, okay, what are they doing 10 years after school? What are they doing 15 years after school when they have a family and a mortgage and they have a little more responsibility to think of? Those are great questions. So for those smaller schools that maybe don't show up in those rankings, which I think the question was led to, that it's a little more superficial in nature anyway. And rankings a lot of time aren't always just about academic strength. Maybe they're about endowment and money too. I think getting to the root of what is actually going into those academic classrooms every day and what is coming out of them really can help you find out the strength of a program.
Yeah, great call. And then any other ones that you want to hit on, whether it's in the chat or the Q&A? There was a couple.
Yeah, I'm going to try to catch up on it if you want to get started. But I saw there was some questions about letters of recommendation.
Sure.
So just really quickly, some people asked about letters of rec. I always say the majority of them get sent in senior, and really all of them do get sent in senior year. Now, many students may go through a separate process, whether it be a 5-year program or athletic recruitment. I actually went through my process myself. I was fortunate enough to run on a scholarship at Bryant and then have also served as a college coach in the past in my career. But letters of rec, what I always tell students to encourage them to do is to try to get them junior year, knowing they're going to be sent senior year. Now, your counselor at your high school most likely will help with that. Most schools require 2 teacher recs and 1 counselor rec. They get sent by your high school, so you don't have to worry about sending them to multiple schools. They don't get addressed specifically to one school. That's not held against you. For example, when I write the letters of rec for my students at Archie's, I write to whom it may concern or to the admissions committee, and schools are very aware of that. So.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. We got a couple of those.
Yeah.
A few things, guys, and we'll, if we have to stick around for a few minutes even after one,
absolutely.
Happy to do it. Want to make sure ton of great questions. So continue to keep them coming. Obviously, you have access to Brian here and myself to the extent that I can provide value. But a couple things that I want to make sure that everybody takes away from today. Number one, just like I said at the top, no matter what you do, take some action here, get the process started if you haven't yet. Again, that's our biggest get this week is we have, and you've probably heard us say a different version of this every day. The students and families that have the most success are those that get started earliest in the process, that are engaged in it, that can get ahead of this. It not only makes this thing, again, more likely to have a successful admissions and financial outcome, but you're going to decrease some of the stress that is inevitable. Nobody's going to avoid it altogether. That's just a part of what we sign up for when we're applying and paying for college nowadays, right here in the United States. There's a couple of kind of free resources that we have, again, in addition to education that we're always providing. I'm putting our Facebook group in the chat here. Join that. It's moderated by our experts. So when we're in there every day, Monday through Friday, and it's also just a good community of your peers that are going through this very same thing, that have similar questions. So make sure that you join that. We also have something called office hours. So you can go to our website. In our free resources section, you will see something called office hours. Every other Monday, at least one of us just hangs out, and it's an open grab bag, right? When we bring on guests like Brian and his peers all the time to talk about what's going on in today, right? What's going on right now? What should we be doing and thinking about? What are macro changes that are on the horizon here? But that's another, I think, great free resource that we offer. Now, I talked about some deals that are going to be specific to live attendees only today, along with some giveaways. So here's what that looks like. Okay. Now, and similar to what we did on Tuesday, we are matching what was our biggest discount that we've ever given for one day. We're doing the same thing today. Okay. And there's a few different things that I would have you consider and at least do something. Now, for anybody, you can book an hour. You can have access to our platform, right, for a year, all the bells and whistles that come with that, and book an hour with one of our experts for generally it's $299. We have 24% off. So I forget what it comes out to, $220 or something like that. To me, that's the biggest no-brainer you're going to find. So all you need to go is go to mycap.collegeaidpro.com. Right, I'll put it in here in the chat. And if you haven't created an account, do that and select the Val Victorian option and use your coupon code here, which is, let me see what today's coupon code is. I just had it. It is CAMP24. That's going to give you 24% off. Okay. I think it's an absolute no-brainer. Meet with Brian, right? Or meet with me, whoever, and get started. Bring your kid on that. I like to say that. And so at a minimum, that is my firm recommendation. Do not overthink it. That coupon code expires at 5 p.m. And we're pretty strict with that because the boss likes to remind me it's not necessarily good for business. So there you go. It's 2/27/24. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. And that expires at 2:00. So at a minimum, do that. Okay. Whether you meet with Brian or somebody on our team, take advantage of that. That deal will go away at 5:00. We like to reward everybody that's, again, on live with us. If you want something more comprehensive, specifically with Brian, okay, we have this all-in package. We call it Wake Me When It's Over, where basically he's going to do this for you, work with your kid one-on-one. He drives this process. He's going to build the list with your student. He's going to be the one that's going to help them figure out what their essay should be about. Do draft reviews. He's going to be the one working on the common apps and the supplemental apps with them, getting them ready with mock interviews and driving that process with the student from beginning to end, right? And obviously to the parents to the extent they want to be involved. Now, much bigger lift, because that is something where Brian's not just showing up for this hour. There's a lot of back and forth and it's a long engagement. So the price point is wildly different and it's expensive. It's let me remind myself here. It's $4,000 essentially, $39.99 if you want, but we're doing $500 off today, right? So if that's something that, again, this is not for every family, but for the families that sounds like, yeah, I want somebody to drive this for us. That's a consideration. I'm putting the link in the chat there. Now, some of you have already signed up for our Wake Me When It's Over financial aid package, okay? So that is something where you work one-on-one, unlimited one-on-one with one of our experts. We help strategically make sure that you figure out how to qualify for the max amount of financial aid and scholarships. We collaborate with Brian specifically on building your list, okay? We complete the form. So we're the ones that are doing the FAFSA. We're the ones that are doing the CS profile for you. We're the ones specifically negotiating. We don't use the word negotiate. We are appealing for more money with these colleges, right? We have the director of Harvard financial aid on our team. We have the director of MIT financial aid on our team. We have the director at Oklahoma, the former director at Denison, we have folks that are, again, on that side of the fence that help us be very good at what we do. And these are the people you can meet with as well. And then finally, figure out how you pay the bill. So we charge $3,000 for that, $29.99. If it's something that you wanted to do, again, it's $500 off till 5 o'clock today. For the first time ever, our new kind of option here, Brian, is that we have this kind of combined package where you can do the admissions as well as the financial aid piece of it. Again, it's a lot of money, but as standalones, they're $7,000, but we're going to combine them for one package today for $5,000. So it's essentially $2,000 off, or $49.99 for anybody that said, you know what, I want Brian to drive this process with my kid. And I want you all CAP experts to drive this process with me as parents financially. And we need, again, that's why we name it the Wake Me When It's Over, and just CAP take the wheel and get us through this thing. Then again, the last package I'll put in there is the Wake Me Up. If you just wanted the Wake Me When It's Over from a financial standpoint, I'm putting that in there as well. And again, the coupon code is CAMP24. So I covered a fair amount there, but my big thing is at least do something right, book the hour, and then have full access to the CAP platform for a year. And that way, I think are going to have a great place to start, again, whether it's from an admissions focus standpoint with Brian or one of the financial aid experts on our team, where you want to get started on the financial standpoint. I don't have a firm recommendation of which one makes sense, but or where you start. Obviously, I'm more financial aid, find out financially where you're at first, and then start building that list. But I don't know that there's a right or a wrong there. So at a minimum, do that. The other thing I want to flag here is that, and this is where you upgrade. If you already have your free version, you just hit the top here, unless you want to do one of the more comprehensive packages that I put in the chat. But if your family so the full version of our platform for just the software costs $149 for a year. And then after that, it's $5 a month or $4.99 a month. But if you can't afford that $149 a year, I think it's $113 with a 24% off, something like that. If you can't afford that, just write into us, okay, into support@collegeaidpro.com. And I encourage you to quote me on this and say that you would like the full platform, but you can't afford the $113 a year. And we'll comp you on that, right? This goes for especially if you're a free or reduced lunch family, or just like that price point sounds like something you'd want to do, but that cost is too prohibitive. Tell us, we'll make sure that we get you on there. But yeah, again, our biggest get is that you do something, get started. Don't overthink this. Don't wait. And you don't have to use it right now, right? You can buy the hour and say, we'll use it later. You can use it at your leisure, right? But I would take advantage of the deal and you will thank yourself. And let's put it this way. And again, I'm on record and this is being recorded. If you decide to invest in any of these and you decide you didn't get a return on that investment, it wasn't a good use of your time for the hour, you didn't get any value out of the platform or the bigger packages, 100% refund, will give you your money back. Okay. And we've done it before. It's very rare, but it's happened, and we stick to our word. And so keep that in mind. Hopefully that alleviates any hesitation. I know when you look at $85,000 colleges, the last thing you want to do is think about spending money, but this is an investment, and I believe in my guts it's a wise investment. And by the way, Brian, you did a very nice job today. According to my mom and dad, they generally tune in today, and they were very impressed. So
that's funny to hear, because I will say, even though she's retired, my mom many times clues into my presentations as well too. You still get the jitters when you see your mom's name log on sometimes. So I get it as well.
Donna and Scott Carpenter singing your praises. Okay. So quick question on terms of the just access to the software, the Scholar plan, that's $113. Okay. That gives you access to the platform for a year. It's $227 that gets you access to the platform for a year plus an hour with whoever you want, whether it's Brian specific or anybody on our team or just next available, or however you want to do that. And yeah, it's good for 1 year, and then it's $5 a month after that, or $4.99 specifically a month after that. And then let's see. So I think that answers that. And the package, the comprehensive packages, financial aid packages, is good until the student moves into their dorm, is how we say it. And then for subsequent years, for us to do the FAFSA, et cetera, again, it's $299 for those subsequent years. But for you juniors or for you sophomores, that package is good from whenever you sign up with us until the student actually enrolls in college again. We say that just short of moving you into your dorm, we got you covered there. Okay, I didn't know the. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I know this is so we knew we were going to get this today. As Brian knows, that happened a little bit. We had to flush it out this week leading up to last night. But for those of you that bought the Wake Me already that want to do the combo package, just contact us. We have that all figured out on the back, and we have the plumbing figured out where you can get the discounts on each and make sure that you're not paying. You get that $5,000 package as opposed to paying the $7,000. So, yep. Thank you for flagging that, and we're happy to help you. Just write into us, and our team's prepared to help facilitate that. Okay. Yeah, and I think so. We have a financial advisor that's working with a family here, but would want some help on the admission sides. The price points would really still be the same. So if you wanted to leverage Brian for that, it would just be the same kind of hourly rate if you just wanted to do the one-offs or the more comprehensive package. Okay. Yeah, and when should we sign up for the Wake Me When It's Over package? As early as freshman year, sophomore, junior, and if you're a freshman, you have time. I think, I don't know, Brian would say differently. We'll still be able to provide value, but really sophomore, junior year is the sweet spot.
And for if you're thinking about really like driving up the process, it's really spring of junior year is when I'll start really working with students about building a list. But summer of junior year works too. I'm realistic that springtime can be really busy for students, particularly if they're involved in AP courses or spring sports, things like that. So it's really that kind of 6 to 9 month period between kind of the spring of your junior year to the fall of their senior year. You want to use the spring of junior and summer of junior as work time so that the fall is not overwhelming, that you feel prepared headed into that fall.
Yeah, that's a good call. What did I want to add to that? But yeah, from a financial standpoint, starting January 1st of your student's sophomore year is what's called your base income year. This is the year that FAFSA and CSS Profile are looking at. So even you sophomore parents, you're already in the year that is going to dictate financial aid eligibility for freshman year. So you're very much still in our sweet spot as far as that's concerned and not too early. Yeah. Okay. I think I got most of those. Sorry, guys. I appreciate all the questions and happy to hang on here. And yeah, all the recordings are going to be sent next Tuesday, right? You're going to have all 4 days, all 4 recordings, slide decks, etc. Okay. And then the email address is just support@collegeaidpro.com. Okay, getting a lot of nice compliments here, Brian. Touche, well done. Yeah, and the 1 hour admissions package, guys, same exact. It doesn't matter what you do. Is again, as you're looking at my screen here, when you go to upgrade, if you haven't created your account already, if you choose the valedictorian package, you can either choose, I want to meet with the next available person, or a drop down and choose Brian if you want to focus on. You'll see Brian Ford is one of the options of who you can meet with if you want to focus on the admission side. And no, the Bootcamp 24 code from Tuesday expired, so it's just Camp 24 is 24% off for anything on my cap, or $500 off of either the admissions or financial aid Wake Me When It's Over packages, those comprehensive ones. And again, we have the $2,000 off if you wanted to do both the admissions and financial aid Wake Me When It's Over deal. But yeah, again, guys, and you can always add hours to the package, but those are just a la carte, right? If you book 1 hour, it's just 1 hour. But you can also, what some people do on these types of days, those of our savvy users, is they will book multiple hours just with the 1 day deal or whatever, and then use them whenever they see fit over the coming weeks and months, right? Yeah. So you can all do that within your CAP platform group. Question. Yeah, this is an interesting question, Brian, and I think we get different. I'm personally curious as to how you would answer this. I have an idea, but okay, is it best to not disclose something like autism in your application? Do schools secretly discriminate?
No, it's illegal to discriminate. The one thing I would do is, whether you have a student who has autism or really any type of learning accommodation for a student that you're working with, that is something that you want to disclose to those that you're working with in the process, whether it's your guidance counselor or a private college counselor, because there are schools around the country that have programs for both assistance and support and real learning communities for that. So you want to do your research on the schools, on what is offered in terms of those for students. You're going to see some schools, just like any other factor that could play to admissions decisions, do some things better than others. And that's another example where there are some schools that are excellent in terms of assisting students that may be autistic or have other type of learning accommodations that they work with. And so we want to make sure that we're putting those students in a position to succeed and working with schools that historically have done well with those type of learners in the past.
Yeah, great. That's about what I thought you would say, but yeah, no, it's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do have, for twins, we do have discounts, right? If you're on the platform, we give you 50% off for the second child. And then for any of the other more comprehensive packages, it's between $500 and $1,000 more for the second student, but they're discounted fairly steeply for the twins, regardless of how you want to interface with us. And you can just write into support@collegeaidpro.com with what you're looking for, and we'll take care of you. Yeah, and guys, I know the CEO says, Matt, take it easy with the going out of business sales. But part of the reason for this is just to help you guys, and it's just from years of experience, just to make sure that you start. And again, I'm so confident that you'll be happy that you chose to interact with us in some way. That's why we get fairly lenient with the discounts and the money back policies, and that whole deal is because like I said, we've given people money back before, but 99% of the time it's people that are saying, thank God for pushing me over the edge to helping me to get going, whether it's to help Brian push my kid or you or on the financial aid side to get you guys cooking on that side of the fence. That's why. So thank you for bearing with us there. Okay.
Matt, at this point, I'm probably
jump off.
Yep.
Jump off.
So thank you to everyone for listening and looking forward to working with some of you, hopefully.
All right, Brian, thanks so much, pal. And again, I'll just stick around for 2 minutes, guys, for any last questions. And we'll be in touch, Brian. Have an awesome weekend. Great job as always.
You too.
Yeah, guys. And if you buy the valedictorian package as a sophomore, it gets you access to the platform and an hour with one of our experts now. And then to stay on the platform with all the bells and whistles, it's $4.99 a month after that 1 year anniversary. And again, too, if you want to buy more hours at any point, you just do that a la carte here. Okay. Yeah, actually, great question here. What if our income fluctuates year to year? What if right now our 23 income is going to be really good and we go to apply for financial aid 2 years from now and our income stinks and it's way lower and we're essentially being punished for what happened 2 years ago? That's an appeal part of the process, right? We have to answer the questions based on how they're asked. They're going to ask, what was your 2023 adjusted gross income? That's a black and white question. We have to answer it as such, but there is a method to the madness in terms of how do we go back to those colleges and do better than whatever those initial offers looked like. So guys, I'm going to run here. I appreciate all the questions. Appreciate you hanging on for the extra 10 minutes. And again, great questions. Oh shit, there is a giveaway. That's right. I totally forgot. Thank you. Whoever books one of those hours, 2 people are going to get that comped, are going to get that for free. Thank you. Thank you for flagging that right at the end there. And you're going to get to choose, do you want it to be with Brian or one of our financial aid experts? So whoever buys that valedictorian package today, 2 of them are going to get chosen and are going to get refunded right away and obviously still get the deliverable that comes with it. And that's going to be announced Tuesday when we send out the recordings. Great call, and thank you for reminding me on that. And I'm sorry to those folks that didn't hear it earlier. But yeah, thank you for that. Okay, guys, it looks like we got yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. And yes, everybody that purchased the valedictorian is going to be eligible for the giveaway. Thank you, guys. Have an awesome weekend. Been a great week. I hope everybody else got some legitimate value out of it as well, at least for one of these days. And again, like I said, no matter what you do, please continue to follow along, if nothing else, for the education. And it's, in some ways, it's us against them, guys. And we wear that with a badge of honor here. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the kind words. Have an awesome weekend. And we'll see you out there, I'm sure, next week. Bye, guys.